Good morning, class. We will finish up the renal system today and move on to the skeletal musculoskeletal system. All right. So please turn to this page in your study guide. We will start by filling in this hormone chart. We actually will be learning quite a bit of hormone between now and the end of the course. And every time we learn a hormone, we're going to fill in one of these charts. Okay, so the chart will tell you important information about the hormones, such as where is it secreted from, what trigger the release of the hormone. That's what stimulus means, and the effects on the target. All right. So last time we learned about aldosterone, and the location of secretion for aldosterone is going to be the adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex. When we learned it last week, last class, we said adrenal gland, right? And the adrenal gland sits on top of the kidney, right? So there's your kidney, and then the adrenal gland is going to be right on top of it. What I did not tell you at the time was that the adrenal gland actually separates into two parts. There is the adrenal cortex, which is the outside, and then there's the adrenal medulla. Right? And then they actually secrete different kind of hormones. And the aldosterone comes from the adrenal cortex. All right. Now, the stimulus that the trigger for releasing aldosterone is going to be low blood pressure. Low blood pressure. And we know the low blood pressure is going to eventually trigger RAS, right? So trigger RAS, the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, right? And aldosterone is the end result of turning on the RAS, right? But it all started with low blood pressure, which can be caused by dehydration. It could be caused by blood loss, for example, right? The effects on target, right? So it's going to act on the distal tubule and collecting duct, right? So the target is distal tubule and collecting duct of the kidney, of course. And what it does is we will, the aldosterone will increase sodium absorption, which in turns will increase water absorption. It just kind of follows the salt, right? And then you will have increased blood volume and blood pressure. Okay. So the end result is going to be opposite to the trigger in most of the cases, right? If the trigger is low blood pressure, you're going to go through all these things that would ultimately result in an increase in blood pressure. So that is aldosterone. Aldosterone has an antagonist, right? An antagonistic hormone. They function opposite to each other to help maintain some kind of homeostasis. In the case of, that's down here, I'm sorry. We haven't talked about ADH yet, we will, but let's skip to the antagonistic hormone of aldosterone, which is ANH, right? So this is cells in the atria of the heart, obviously. And to trigger the release of ANH, it will be increase, or like high blood pressure, we can say. High blood pressure. So what it does is it will inhibit the release of renin from the JGA and aldosterone from the adrenal cortex. Right? We don't need the renin, we don't need the aldosterone if your blood pressure is already high, right? We don't want it to go even higher, right? So it makes sense for the ANH to inhibit the release of these hormones. But furthermore, it will act on the distal tubule and collecting duct, but essentially doing the exact opposite of what aldosterone is doing. So we're going to have increased sodium and chlorine secretion. Instead of conserving it, instead of absorbing it back from the filtrate, you are adding more sodium chloride to your filtrate. You're getting rid of it from your blood. And like I said, water will always follow the salt, so increase water secretion, which will decrease blood volume because you're peeing all of it out. And decreased blood volume will lead to decrease in blood pressure. Okay, so it's like a constant balance between how much sodium to put in the filtrate and how much sodium to conserve, and that ultimately has a role in regulating your blood pressure. Okay, so that is what we where we left off last time. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now. So next hormone, the last hormone we'll learn in the kidney unit is something called ADH, anti-diuretic hormone. I told you uretic means going to pee, right? Natriuretic, peeing out sodium. So anti-diuretic is basically not peeing, right? Anti-peeing hormone. And you would want to not pee as much if you're dehydrated. Okay, so the ADH, the purpose of the ADH is to help conserve water in the body. Okay. Now I'm gonna show you a little bit of things that we will be learning again and again in the next couple of lessons. Okay, so here we have the hypothalamus. And what's the thing that dangles from below the hypothalamus? Anybody remember?
Is it pituitary gland?
Yeah, the pituitary gland. Excellent. Someone once told me when I asked the question, they're like, the testicles? I'm like, no, this is not the testicle. This is the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is actually separated into two parts, which I never told you before. But we have the anterior pituitary gland, AP, we'll say anterior, the one that's facing the front. And then here we have the PP, the posterior pituitary gland. I guess I can write it out, anterior. Now this is very important because again, it's a theme that we're gonna keep on coming back again and again in the next couple of lectures. Now you already know, you should already know that there is a relationship between how the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland function. Okay, they work together to maintain homeostasis. Exactly how they work together, we're going to talk more about it. But here is one thing that we should know. Let me choose a different color here. Within the hypothalamus, there are some neurons. Okay, And these neurons, they extend their axon all the way to the posterior pituitary gland, right? All the way there. And so some hormones, such as ADH, they are made in the hypothalamus, right? Made in the hypothalamus, but stored and released from the posterior pituitary gland, right? So the cell body of the neuron makes the ADH. They are packaged into little vesicles. The vesicles travel down the axon, and then they're stored in the axon terminal of the neuron. And those axon terminals are located within the posterior pituitary gland. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind. There are some hormones that are made in the hypothalamus and stored and released from the PP. The anterior pituitary gland makes its own set of hormones, okay, which we'll learn later. So like I said, ADH helps regulate blood osmolarity by promoting water absorption at distal tubule and collecting duct, right? To keep it simple, basically it conserves water. You absorb more water at DT and CD, okay? So let's take a look at the next picture. When a person is dehydrated, the blood osmolarity increases. That should make sense to you, right? Your blood is more concentrated when you have less water in it. Okay, so if you're sweating excessively, if you're not replenishing your body with water on a hot summer day, you get dehydrated, and then your blood concentration goes up. So that causes the cells in the hypothalamus to shrink. Think back last semester, right? Like if you have a cell and then the surrounding area has high osmolarity, right? Then it creates a hypertonic solution, right? Hypertonic environment. So what happens is fluid will leave the cell, right? Okay, and cause it to shrink, to shrivel up. So the hypothalamus shrinks. The cells in the hypothalamus shrinks when you're dehydrated, and that shrinking of the neurons of the cells in the hypothalamus will send a signal down the axon. Right, it's going to send an action potential down the axon, and then you're going to have all these vesicles here, right? Instead of storing neurotransmitters like we learned before, these are going to contain ADH, right? So the shrinkage sends a signal down the axon all the way to the posterior pituitary gland, and it causes these vesicles that are containing ADH to be released. Okay. In addition, the hypothalamus, in response to the shrinking of the cells, creates a thirsty sensation. So you wanna drink, right? You crave for some kind of fluid, right, to help quench the quench. Is that what you say? Quench the thirst. Okay. So two things, right? There is a behavioral response, and then there is a hormonal response to the dehydration, essentially. Okay. Now you might be thinking, wait, hold on a second. Isn't dehydration also the trigger for activating the RAS, right? Because last time we said dehydration could lead to a drop in blood pressure, which then caused the JGA to release the renin and then the whole thing, right? And you're correct, right? It's important to understand multiple things can occur simultaneously at the same time in response to a particular stimulus, right? So if your blood concentration is going up and you're dehydrated, both the RAS and the ADH can be turned on at the same time, right? There's no problem with that. There's no conflict, right? Okay, so it's in fact better. You have two mechanisms that would help, fix the problem. All right. So this is like a flow chart that shows you what's going on. The trigger, the stimulus, is high blood osmotic pressure, high blood concentration, basically, right? Remember osmotic pressure? Like so many things, right? Like from way back in the first lecture, right? Osmotic pressure is caused by the solute in your blood, right? And they draw fluid into the vessels, right? So if it's really high, right, then that means your blood concentration is high, right? Okay, that means you're dehydrated. So, like I said, the osmoreceptor in the hypothalamus detects the change, right? And then that would create a behavioral response. You feel thirsty. Hopefully, you have water nearby. You drink it. It will dilute your blood, and then not right away, but then soon after, you're gonna restore equilibrium. But if water is not available or you're not drinking enough, right? Or if you're like severely dehydrated, then we need to have the ADH as well. Okay, so the cell in the hypothalamus shrink as a result of these hypertonic environment around it. That sends a signal down to the posterior pituitary gland. It doesn't say posterior here, but you should know it's the posterior. And that's going to release the ADH. ADH goes to your distal tubule and collecting duct, and you're going to absorb water. Okay, you don't want to be losing water through peeing. Okay, you want to keep as much of it as possible. All right. So without ADH, in the absence of ADH, then we okay. So just to backtrack a little bit first, this is the descending limb. This is the ascending limb, right? You remember last class we said the descending limb is for absorbing water. So as the filtrate goes down, the filtrate gets more concentrated, right? And you can see the dots are like closer together to represent higher concentration. The filtrate is the highest, is the most concentrated at the bottom of the loop, right? And of course, the loop of Henle goes down to the renal medulla and then coming back up to the cortex. And then on the way up, we will be absorbing sodium chloride, which is why the filtrate concentration will be lowering as it moves up. Okay? But normally speaking, that's it. We're not going to make much adjustment. We're not going to be absorbing water anymore at the distal tubule, DT, and collecting duct. Okay? Sometimes it's called DCT. The C is convoluted because it's all twisted up, right? The distal convoluted tubules. We just call it distal tubule, it's fine. So in the absence of ADH, we produce large volume of diluted urine. Okay, if you're well hydrated, right, your urine should be like, lightly yellow in color, right? Okay. On the other hand, in the presence of ADH, you're conserving water, then we will be taking out more water in the DT and the collecting duct, the CT, right? So that's going to cause your urine to concentrate. Not much water in it, mostly just waste product, right? So small volume of concentrated urine. So these urines are going to be darker in coloration, right? Deep yellow, right? Brownish, even if you're severely dehydrated. Does that make sense? Does anyone want to ask anything? No? Everybody's happy? Great. Let's try this question. Okay, that was a minute and a half. Does anyone else want to lock in their answer before I end the poll? Okay. So if the drug inhibits the reabsorption of sodium, that means the sodium remains inside the filtrate, right? Okay, sodium stays in the filtrate. If you have more sodium in the filtrate, then the osmolarity is going to go up, right? It's not going to be going down because it's more concentrated if you have more sodium in it. So automatically C and D are not the choice. Okay? So is it A or is it B? Is it higher than collecting duct or is it higher than descending limb? So let's go back here and see. If you block all these sodium absorption in the loop of Henle, then your filtrate concentration here, right? Instead of the dots getting like further apart to represent lowering concentration, it would be equally concentrated now, right? As before, because you know the drug is blocking sodium absorption, okay? Like that. So as they move on, it will continue to be like that, right? So the filtrate will be higher compared to the distal tubule, compared to the collecting duct, okay? But it will be the same compared to the descending limb. It will be the same as like the bottom of the loop, basically. Okay? So the answer is going to be higher than the normal in the collecting duct, okay? And it would be the same, or at least very similar to the concentration of the descending limb. Okay. There is a condition called diabetes insipidus. These individuals do not, they're not able to produce ADH. Okay, the cells in the hypothalamus that makes ADH are not there, and as a result, they can't conserve water, and then they keep on peeing out basically constantly. And in very extreme cases, they have as much as 20 liters of diluted urine produced each day, and they must constantly rehydrate themselves, otherwise they get dehydrated. So this has nothing to do with the normal, like the usual diabetes that people know of. It's just, you know, the same name, okay, but totally different mechanism. Diabetes insipidus. And that's it. Okay, we are actually behind schedule. I just realized it this morning, and so we're gonna skip all these kidney diseases. There will be no kidney question on the next quiz. All right, that's the end of the lecture. So let me ask you, when you're sleeping at night, do you think your body have high ADH or low ADH? Okay, if you think high ADH, like higher than normal, okay, ADH, please choose A. If you think lower than normal ADH, please choose B. When you are sleeping at night, what's your body gonna do? Mix some ADH or not? Okay, we have way more people. Oh, not anymore. Oh, lots of you participated this time. Okay, that's good. That's good. All right, so we have 50-50, almost 50-50, 60-40%. More people say less ADH than more ADH when you're sleeping. What does ADH help you to do? Think about it in your head. Okay, what does ADH do? Does ADH makes you pee or not pee? Not pee, right? Okay. Conserve water, right? When you're sleeping, do you want to be conserving water or do you want to be not conserving water? Right? So keeping that in mind, let's launch the poll one more time. Okay. When you're sleeping, do you have high ADH or low ADH? Let's try one more time. Okay, I'm waiting for a couple more. Last time I had 10 responses, so three more of you have to answer. But I think I've convinced that some of you to change your mind, okay? Which is good. Okay, so the correct answer is your body will be making ADH, right? Because number one, you are not drinking while you're sleeping, okay? Like you're not replenishing water when you're sleeping. So it makes sense to conserve water, right? Assuming you sleep like a good 8 hours, right? So you have this 8 hour period where you're not intaking water, so it makes sense to conserve water, right? And you don't want to be waking up to pee all the time, so the ADH is going to be higher than normal. All right, so that's it. That is it. I mean, I'll post the answer key to the study guide, and then you can fill in this hormone chart on your own. The quiz is going to be next Wednesday. I will post the information for you later on. Actually, you know what? I think it's probably a good idea to move it to Monday. Okay, just to move things ahead. And you know maybe I'll just open the quiz on Monday if you want to get it done and get it out of the way. Great. I'll give you a period of like Monday to Wednesday or something. Okay. 2 attempts, right? Here's what not to do. Some people wait until the last, I don't know, last day, and then they do the first attempt, and then immediately they do the second attempt. Like that is just not a good way to utilize this opportunity, right? Like if you take the quiz and then you take it immediately again, the chance of getting a substantially higher grade the second time is, probably not going to happen, right? So like you should take the quiz, right? Okay, and then you will know your mark, by the way. Like I'll let you know what your grades are. You can check it afterwards. And then the second time is optional. You don't have to take it. If you get like 89% on the first time, maybe you don't want to take a second chance. But then if you decided to do it again, then study a little bit, right? Okay, you won't be able to see the question, you won't be able to see which one you get right or wrong, but at least you will know what your grades are before you do the second one. Someone asked me if ROS is triggered when sleeping. Probably not. Okay, ROS is more sensitive to like drop in blood pressure. When we're sleeping, your blood pressure, sure, it drops a little bit, but not like to like a dangerous level, right? It just drops because we're more relaxed when we're sleeping, right? So no, it's not gonna trigger it. Okay, that is that. Let's move on. We only have like 3 more weeks, I think. It's like going really, really fast. So this lecture is very long. It's separated into part A, which is focusing on the skeleton, and then part B, which focuses on the muscle. Right. So let's see if we can get through a bulk of the skeleton today. So what is the function of the skeleton? Quite straightforward. The skeleton obviously creates a framework that supports the body. Okay, so like, we're able to stand up straight. We're not going to slouch over and because we don't have any kind of support, right? The bones of the lower limbs, the legs basically, is going to be there, propping up our body. The spine, backbone, right? That provides some kind of support as well. And they protect soft body parts. Okay? Like the skull protects the brain, rib cage protects the heart and the lungs, and then you got your pelvic girdle that protects your reproductive system, protects your urinary bladder, right? So it's important, right? We don't want to damage our internal organs. again, way back in lecture 2, we learned about hematopoiesis, right? The production of new blood cells that happens in the bone marrow, right? So in certain bones, the inside of certain bones are these active bone marrow, and that's where you will find these stem cells, which would continuously produce red blood cells. Okay, so all the bones are going to be actively producing blood cells, not just red ones, okay, like all kinds of blood cells, red cells, white cells, platelets, what have you. When it's in a fetus, all the bone marrows are going to be doing this. But in adults, only certain bones will have active red bone marrow. Okay, so these includes bones like femur. Femur is like your thigh bone. Okay, it's the longest bone in the body. The pelvis, the sternum, right? So all these sites will still have active red bone marrow, but as we age, some of the red bone marrow gets converted into yellow bone marrow, which is primarily just fat, right, for storage of fat. Some people like to eat like bone marrow. I don't. Apparently, is like, I mean, it's like a fancy food, okay? And it's really savory and juicy, and it's juicy because of the fat, basically. Okay, when the red bone marrow gets converted into yellow bone marrow, it's fatty, right? That's why it's to some people it's good. The skeleton also stores minerals and fat, and I told you about the fat already. But you should also know, right? It stores calcium, right? Bone. You must have heard it before, right? Drink milk because it's good for your bones, right? Because of the calcium. But it's not just the calcium that's important. We also store phosphate. Okay, PO4. 3 negative. Phosphate is important for various things, right? Your ATP has 3 phosphates on it, right? Your phospholipids, that makes your cell membrane, those have phosphate on it, right? So, there are a lot of places that needs phosphate in the body. And, a lot of it is stored in the bones. And finally, movements, right? The muscle is going to pull on our skeleton, and the skeleton forms these articulations or these joints that allows different kind of movement, right? So, moving your head from side to side, that's a pivot joint, right? Your elbow moving, that is going to be a hinge joint. So these different kind of joints, different kind of articulations permits movement. Bone cells are called osteocytes. Osteocytes, okay? And in terms of composition, 35% roughly of bone is made up of organic material. Organic means it contains carbon, right? So the main organic material in bones is collagen. It gives the bone a little bit of flexibility. It sounds weird, right? You think about it, bone is like hard, right? What do you mean flexibility? But it's something can be hard and flexible at the same time, right? Think of like a pencil, right? Okay, and I have a pencil here. Like I can bend it a little bit, right? Like if I bend it too much, it will snap. But like it's not like completely rigid, right? I can bend it a little bit. So that's flexibility to it. And you would need flexibility for your bone, right? To help absorb the shock when we put stress on it, right? Let's say you jump down from a ledge or something and you land, and you want those bones in your legs to be able to absorb a little bit of shock. Okay, so that's the organic part, and the rest is inorganic. Okay, there's no carbon in it, and it's mostly calcium salt, right, or phosphate salt. Okay, and those harder parts provides the actual support. When we were developing as a fetus in the mother's womb, the entire skeleton starts off as cartilage. Okay, so cartilage are like the soft bone that makes up your nose, your ears, right? They're flexible. If you fold your ear, it will just reopen up to its normal shape. So when we were developing, initially, every bone in the body starts off as cartilage. Okay, And then what happens is the cartilage slowly gets replaced by actual bone. Right? This process starts at around 8th week of embryonic development and is called ossification. Ossification. Okay, that's like depositing calcium salt into those cartilage and converting it to bone. Okay, so this is a picture of a 12-week-old fetus. The purple part is the actual bone, and then the blue part is the cartilage. Right, so you can see the replacement, the ossification, starts in the inner core of the bone, and then it slowly spreads out. This process is not even completely done by the time the baby comes out. Okay, that's why the bones of the babies are very soft, right? The ossification process is still going to continue after birth, right? So like babies, they have a soft spot, right? If you have a kid, right, or if you ever seen a baby before, you would know the soft spot at the top here, right? Like you can see it moving. Right? People say, "Oh, it's the brain below." It's not the brain below. Okay, it's just the blood vessels that are pulsating. But that is basically incomplete ossification. Right? The bones in the skull have not fully ossified yet. They have not completely become the solid yet, and then eventually it will fuse, and you won't have a soft spot anymore. And again, like if your head have kids, then you might know that some babies, their heads are very soft, and if the baby sleep on one side too much, then that side of the head actually get flat. Okay, and then they have to wear like special helmets or something to reshape the head. And I don't know if I told you this before, but then my second daughter, my younger daughter, she didn't come out. Like she didn't want to come out during birth, right? So they have to vacuum her out. And when you vacuum a baby out, the head becomes like longer because you essentially pulling them out, right? And the bone is so soft that the head tends to change shape. And so, like at the beginning, my mother would be holding her, and she would just be on the sofa, and then she'd be like rubbing her head, right? And then my wife would look at me and it's like, what is your mom doing? Why is she rubbing our daughter's head like that? I was like, oh, she's trying to reshape it. She thinks rubbing it is gonna help it become more spherical. And maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But the theory is that the head is still kind of soft, right, for the baby, and if you apply too much force to it, you might be able to reshape it. Anyways, you can't tell now that she's like 6 years old. Like the head looks fine. It's under all the hair, anyways, right? Like you can't really tell. So bone mass increases until the person is about 24. So if you're younger than 24 years old, there is hope for you. You can continue to absorb calcium and kind of build up this reservoir of bone mass in you. And after age 24, it just gradually decline. And of course, right, if you are a woman and you give birth, that takes a lot of calcium from you, right? Because you got to basically supply all the calcium to build all that bone for the baby while it's growing inside you as well, right? So that's why like taking calcium supplement is very important, for certain people. Even in adults, bones are continually being remodeled and repaired. Bone is not a static structure, as we will see in the notes that we're going to write in a bit. It's constantly being remodeled in the sense that you break down some of the bones and then you redistribute the resource in other places. Okay, it's like a wall that keeps on being taken down and rebuilt. Okay, and you constantly do this in the body. Okay, what ends up being a problem is you knock that process out of balance. Okay, if you take down more than you build, then your bone becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, right? Okay, and that's not a good thing. So there are two types of cells that are involved in this remodeling process. We have what's called osteoclasts. Okay, these are cells that are responsible for absorbing the calcium from the bone, okay? And the osteoblasts are the ones that are going to be depositing calcium in the bones. So in other words, the osteoclast is responsible for breaking down the bones. And there are instances where you need to do that. And osteoblasts, B for build, these are the ones that are going to be building your bones by putting more calcium into the bone, okay? These are in addition to the osteocytes, right? Okay, so they're like completely different. So 3 types of cells basically: the osteocytes, which helps maintain the we call it the matrix of the bone. I'll get to that later. And then we have these osteoclasts and osteoblasts. They are there to help remodel the bone. Okay, it's possible someone have a little fracture in their bone, right? Like a hairline fracture, just not so much that it broke, but then just a tiny crack. And then the osteoblast can repair the crack, right, by putting calcium in there and sealing the gap. All right, so we're gonna take a note right now, and it's gonna be a lot of drawings. I hope you're ready for it. Get a piece of paper, and we will draw some bones. Structure of compact bone. I probably would draw like landscape. We're gonna start by drawing a bone here. We're gonna be taking things out, and then we're gonna be draw, and then maybe write something here. Okay. So, long bone. What are examples of long bone? Okay, we'll talk more about that later, but long bones are basically bones that are like rectangular in shape. It doesn't have to be like long, okay? Like something like this, like in your fingers, you have like 5 bones here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are considered as long bone as well, okay? Long, not in the sense of like, a meter long or something. Min said the femur, exactly, right? Like your thigh bone, right, is a long bone. Femur, like here, okay, like this bone right here, that's the longest bone in your body, okay, the femur. Your humerus, okay, your humerus right here, the funny bone, that's a long bone. Okay, so we're gonna take a long bone right here, and we're gonna draw it. There we go. I haven't done this in a while, so hopefully it'll work out. There's your long bone. Okay, and the long bone has a shaft right here, and that is called the diaphysis. Diaphysis. The auto caption is totally not picking up that word, but that's how you say it, the diaphysis. And at the ends of the long bone, we have the epiphysis. Oh, it knows that one, but not the diaphysis. Weird. So here is another epiphysis. Okay. Now the bones that are located at the ends, at the epiphysis, they are kind of like honeycomb structures. Okay, they're not like solid, densely packed. They're honeycomb structures, and we call them like spongy bones. Contains spongy bones, which are kind of like, again, honeycomb. Same thing here, right?
Sorry, Professor. Is the epiphysis contain spongy bones?
Yes, the epiphysis contains spongy bones.
Thank you.
The honeycomb looking one. Okay, so they're like this, very porous. Okay, like that. I don't know if that makes any sense. Okay, So that's what the spongy bones are like. Let me see if I can move this stuff in there. There you go. Okay. Now in the middle area here, that is where you will find the what am I drawing? Maybe you can tell me, some of you. Okay, what is this red thing?
Bone marrow.
That is the bone marrow. Very good. Okay, that's the bone marrow. Bone marrow. That's where you will get new blood cells, right? Hematopoiesis. Okay. The bones that makes up the diaphysis is going to be called compact bone. Okay, contains compact bone. So the compact bone is much denser compared to the spongy bones, and it's excellent for providing strength. So we're gonna cut a slice here, okay, and you know, take a slice right here, and we're gonna zoom in and see what it looks like, okay. So my favorite prop for online learning is my trusty tissue roll. This thing has been like the blood vessel. It has been like the trachea, and now it's going to be our compact bone. Okay, so this hole in the middle, that is where you will have the bone marrow, and then all this white stuff, the tissue, right? That's where the compact bone is going to be. It's really dense. Okay, compared to the honeycomb structures of the spongy bone, right? There's like no holes in it, right? It's very packed, right? So we're gonna take a slice of this and then we're gonna draw it, okay? So this is gonna take some effort. Again, I haven't draw this for a very long time. So there is going to be a slice. Okay, we're gonna take a slice of it. There we go. It's like a pie, okay? Like, you know, the tissue paper roll? Okay, I'm taking a slice of it. Taking a slice of it. That's what we're looking at, okay? So I'm taking out a slice here, and then I'm gonna be peeling it off a little bit. Okay. Just give me a second. I know you're probably like, what the heck is he doing? It will make sense in a bit, I promise. Okay, so there we go. Okay, and I'm trying to peel off a little bit, if it makes sense. Gonna peel off a little bit here. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. Now, what does peeling off mean? It's like this. I'm taking a piece and then I'm peeling it off. Okay, I'm trying to draw that. You see? Okay. So this thing that came off, that's like this piece right here. Do you guys understand what I'm trying to do? Feel free to ask questions. Okay, like, please. There we go. Okay, so what did I just peel off? Well, all bones are actually covered by a thin layer. This is like out of proportion, okay? It's like a thin layer of connective tissue. Okay, this thin layer is called the periosteum. Periosteum. It is connective tissue for things to attach to the bone, right? For like tendons, right? Blood vessels to attach to the bone. right? Tendon is like the end of a muscle, right? And that needs to attach to the bone. And so that's what the periosteum is for. And it covers the entire bone. Right? Like if you really want, like you could do a little bit here, right? Like it covers the outside all the way. Okay. Oh, I forgot something. I'm sorry. Over here at the epiphysis, there's going to be a little bit of cartilage. Okay. So that is called the articulate cartilage. This is where it's gonna make a joint, right, with another bone. And whenever you have a joint that rubs together, there's gonna be a lot of friction and stuff like that. So the cartilage helps prevent wear and tear. I'm just gonna pause for a second for you to catch up. I know some of you want me to zoom out a little bit, maybe. And please take this opportunity to ask anything.
So the articulate cartilage is superficial to the perio. How to say this word?
Sorry, the articulate cartilage is what? Is
It's superficial.
Yes, it's superficial. Yeah.
Thank you.
We actually see this articulate cartilage when you eat like chicken or something. You know, if you do eat chickens, if you think about like the little drumstick, right? Like the chicken here, like at the end of it, there's usually a little bit white part, right? That white part is the articulate cartilage, right? Okay. Anything else? Okay. So let's go back to our pie here. So again, we're taking a slice of the chef here, of the diaphysis, and all this stuff here, all this material, that is made up of compact bone. Compact bone. Okay. So what is in the compact bone? Well, the compact bone is made up of a bunch of circles. Okay, I'm just gonna draw a few of it. Just know that they're everywhere. Okay, like you're gonna have these circles all over the place. And inside the circles, you have more circles. This is for real. Okay, like if you look at under the microscope and you look at bones, that's exactly what they look like. If you were in my class last semester, I might have shown you a bone slide, right, for the microscopy lab, for some of the groups anyway. Okay, so this whole thing, one of these things, is called an osteon. Osteon, and it is the structural unit of compact bone. Okay, what does that even mean? Structural unit is the basic building block of something. If you think about a wall, right, a single brick would be the structural unit of the wall. Okay. So these osteons are the structural unit, the building blocks of compact bone, right? So like you might have another one here and another one here. Like I don't want to make the diagram too busy, right? As you go out to the edge, eventually they're just going to become like lines. Okay, like lines, kind of like tree rings, right? Okay, but then like here, you might have another one, you might have another one, so on and so forth. So that's an osteon. Okay, now coming out from the middle of the osteon is going to be, and hope you have colors with you, it's going to be blood vessels. Okay, so the blood vessel is going to come up. Okay, remember, this is like a three-dimensional thing, right? That's going to be blood vessels coming up like that. And of course, you're going to have veins as well. So like I said, bone is not a static structure, it's alive. It has all these cells in it. So it's not surprising that you're going to have the, blood vessels. Okay, so where did the blood vessel, where do they come from? Well, remember, we have the periosteum, right? That provides attachment sites for tendons and for blood vessels. So, there might be a blood vessel that latches onto the bone like that, okay? And then it's gonna come in. And then it's gonna, go up, right? And then maybe it's gonna go down as well. And then eventually it might have another sideway, and then it's gonna go up. It pops up here, and then it might pop up here, right? So these things are like continuous, right? Underneath. Right? Do you understand? Like, you probably don't have to draw the whole thing, but understand it's like a column, right? Literally like the tissue paper, right? We're just looking at it at the top, but it goes all the way down, right? So there is a blood vessel that goes through it, and then once it comes down here, maybe it branches sideways. Do you understand this? Right? Like, it doesn't have to be a perfect diagram, right? Like, I'm gonna show you the proper one from the textbook later on, okay? But all these things are going to be columns essentially, okay? Maybe I take that away. Is it okay? Like, any question? Okay. I'm going to take one of these osteon out, and then we're going to draw a little bit more detail about it. Okay, so here is an osteon. Just take a big one here. Okay, and like a chunk there. So there's the osteon. Okay. So at the center where the blood vessels are popping out, okay, that's called the central canal. Okay, central canal. Sounds very familiar, right? That's because it's the same word as the thing in the middle of your spinal cord. Okay? So this, again, it's where the blood vessels are going to be coming out from. So there are also these empty pockets that are scattered throughout. Okay, I want to do another ring here. Ooh, this one is not perfect. There we go. Okay, so there are these pockets that are scattered throughout. If you think about this as like a raisin cinnamon roll, right? The raisin would be those empty pockets. Okay, so that's called a lacuna. Okay, plural is like lacunae. Okay, with an E. So these are pockets found throughout. The osteon. Osteocytes live in them. And the osteocytes that lives in these lacunae, they will be responsible for maintaining the matrix of the osteon. Okay, so the matrix is basically all these other stuff. Okay, again, think about the cinnamon raisin cinnamon bun. Okay, raisin cinnamon bun. Okay, so the actual bun itself, all that flour stuff. Okay, that's the matrix. Okay, like all this stuff here, right? That's so now instead of thinking this as the chef, think of this as the osteon now, right? So this is the central canal, and all this stuff that I'm touching right now, that's the matrix. Okay, and that matrix is of course made up of calcium and phosphate salt, right? So this here, this is the calcified matrix. Calcified bone matrix maintained by the osteocytes. And it has a name, is called the lamina. Okay, and again, plural is laminae. We're almost there. Okay. So this stuff is pretty hard, right? Like calcium salts and phosphate salt. What if the cell here wants to go to another lacuna, right? And what about these blood vessels? How does the blood vessel supply the blood all the way to the bone cells here, right? Like if this is like a wall, right? You can't really go through it, right? But actually, there are these tiny cracks that are coming out from the lacuna. And now they look like little bugs that are crawling on your cinnamon bun. Okay, so I'm going to take one of these things out. So there is the lacuna. And then there are these cracks that are coming out from it. And inside, you would find your osteocytes. And all these cracks, they are called caniculus, like tiny channels, or plural is caniculi. That's it for now. So I'll zoom out and for you to see the whole thing. Anything?
Sir, what was found in the canicula?
Oh, so these are like little cracks, right? Oh, sorry, I totally forgot to explain what that is. Thank you. So let's say we have a bone cell here, the osteocyte. Right? If it wants to move from here to here, then it would have to like squeeze into one of these cracks, and then the crack would eventually connect with the other cracks, right? Okay, and the blood vessels would actually branch off into tiny ones that would basically they're essentially like a network of like cracks in the wall, if you would, and the blood vessels can follow through these cracks so that it would supply blood to all the cells in all of these lacunae. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, like it would just go like that, maybe, so on and so forth, right? Okay, good question. All right, so we're almost there. Remember, all these are like really, really hard bone, compact bones, right? And excuse me. And when we get to the center of it, eventually we're gonna get to the bone marrow, and the bone marrow is a hollow space, right? So located towards the interior, you would have these osteoclasts, right? The one that absorbs the bone, and they would start absorbing the calcified matrix. Okay, they would start breaking down the lamina, and then leave behind like little holes. Okay, so the closer you are to the center, right, the matrix is going to be incomplete, right? You're gonna absorb the calcium and leave behind all these little tiny holes. And then the center will be completely empty. That is where you will find the bone marrow. Okay, like you absorb it instead of like having all these matrix, right? Like the actually hard lines. You will absorb them. You will break down the osteons, and it will leave behind these holes, kind of like Swiss cheese, right? And then the calcium that is being released from the absorption process, they will go back to the outside, and they will add a layer to it. Okay, so like as we are growing from like kids to adult, this process takes material from the center and then they redistribute it to the outside edge. So the bone gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And then you're developing your bone marrow as well. Okay, so essentially, like it's like taking some tissue from the middle, right? Pull it out and then wrap it on the outside. Okay, pull it out, wrap it on the outside. So eventually this thing gets bigger and bigger, right? And then so will the hole in the middle. The hole in the middle is where you will find the bone marrow. Okay, that's that. Now let's take a look at the professional drawing. All right, so that's what we just draw essentially, right? You can see the periosteum here. Right? This is the spongy bone that is being formed in the center, and of course you have spongy bone at the epiphysis as well. Okay, but like along the sheath, along the diaphysis, that's where the spongy bone is going to be. Okay, so we have an osteon here. You can see they actually run all the way down, right? And you can trace the blood vessels all the way back to the surface, to the periosteum. Okay. The yellow is the nerve. Okay, we didn't draw the nerve before, but it's there. And if you take an osteon, right, we have all these lacuna, the caniculi, right? And that's what it looks like in a real picture, right? All these black dots, those are the lacuna. And then you have the central canal in the middle. If you zoom in on one of these lacuna, you would see that there are the caniculi that is coming out. And then we have the osteocytes that are living in these openings. Okay. So that's the that's the anatomy of bone. So your skeleton is separated into two portions. Okay, we have the exoskeleton as well as the appendicular skeleton. Okay, the exoskeleton consists of all the stuff that is shown in blue here. We have the skull, the rib cage, as well as the sacrum and the coccyx. We'll get to that later. And on the back side, the vertebral column, the backbone. So that's like the exoskeletons are like the main frame structure where everything else hangs on it. Okay. And everything else that does hang on it would be part of the appendicular skeleton. That includes your shoulder blades, right? The scapula, the entire arm, the entire leg, as well as part of your pelvic girdle. Okay, so we're going to learn all these bones today, hopefully. But first, let's do a poll, and then we're going to have a break, okay? Just like two poll questions here. Go ahead. What is the arrow pointing at? Okay, good. That would be the lacuna. The lacuna. All these lines that are coming out of it, that's the caniculus. Okay. How about this one? This is a simple one. Good. That would be the periosteum. All right, let's take a 5-minute break. You might want to grab some coloring pencils, crayons, and whatnot. We will be coloring and labeling the skull after. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is the names of the bones, basically. So we're going to start from the head, and then we're going to move all the way down to your toes, and we're going to learn all the bones along the way. So starting with the skull, which includes the cranium, which are the bones that are immediately outside of your brain. And then we have the facial bones. And all these bones are kind of joined together at sutures. Okay, so they're called sutures because if you look at the joining point, they look like they're being stitched together. So that's why we call them sutures. Okay? And remember, these bones were once like cartilage, and at birth the boundaries are still not fully connected yet, so it's still cartilage at that point, and that's why there is the flexibility in the baby's head, right? But ultimately, right, once they are fully ossified, then you will have these sutures. So I will try to explain this to you first in the 3D model, and we will label it afterwards. Okay. I don't know what's the best way for you to do this. I guess you can just listen and then watch the recording afterwards later. This thing is available to you on eCentennial. You can play around with it. I strongly encourage you to do that. Yeah, maybe write down some things if you want to. So this is the head, okay, and on the top here we have the frontal bone. The frontal bone is immediately outside of the frontal lobe, okay, and couple things about it. Again, you can write this down if you want to. You have one frontal bone. Some of the bones in the head, you have two of them, but the frontal bone, you only have one. And if I look at this model, if I tilt it up, you can see it forms the top part of your eye socket. Your eye socket is called the orbit, O-R-B-I-T. That's where your eyeball goes. Okay, so the eyeball socket is actually made up of 7 bones in total. Okay, so the top is formed by the frontal bone. Okay, you can see right here, it goes like pretty deep, right, onto the front. Okay. On the side here, anybody want to guess what this bone is called? Just think about the brain part, the lobe of the brain that it protects. What would this be?
Parietal.
That's
bone.
right. That is the parietal bone, right? And we have 2 of them. Okay, one on the right side and one on the left side. Okay, so at the top here, the parietal bone, you can see the sutures, right? It looks like they are stitched together, like I said, and then it connects at the front with the frontal bone as well. Okay, so 2 parietal bone, and the parietal bone has nothing to do with your eye socket. Underneath the parietal bone, anyone else want to guess this next one? What is this one?
Temporal bone.
That is the temporal bone. Excellent. We have 2 temporal bones, and if you zoom in here, there is a hole right there in the temporal bone, and that is where your ear canal is. Okay, your auditory canal. Okay, so the temporal bone forms the ear canal. There's a little knob here. It's called a mastoid process. You don't have to know that. But like if you feel the back of the ear, go ahead and touch the back of the ear, you feel a knob, right? Hopefully you feel a knob. That knob is this thing right here. There is a muscle that goes from that knob, that attaches to that knob, and all the way runs down the neck and to your sternum. Okay, so that's a muscle that allows you to, tilt your head down on an angle. Okay, so you have another one here, right? And if that one pulls, your head goes this way. Right? So that's what the knob is for. At the back, we have this guy, occipital bone. So one frontal bone, one occipital bone. Things that are in the center, usually there's just one bone, okay? And then you have the two parietal and the two temporal bone. Now, a couple of things here, you know, and all this is in a PowerPoint, right? Okay, I can't switch back and forth between them. But there is a big hole at the bottom of the occipital bone, okay? What comes out from that hole?
Spinal cord.
That's right. The medulla oblongata exits through that hole and becomes the spinal cord, right? What do we call a hole in the body? We learned that in the brain stuff. A hole.
Cavity.
Foramen.
A foramen, yeah, foramen. A cavity is more like an empty space, right? Okay, a foramen. So this is a really big hole. So it's called the foramen magnum. Magnum means really big. Okay, M-A-G-N-U-M. Okay, foramen magnum. Now, I don't know if you can see this here. Let me see if I can isolate this guy. There we go. On the lateral side of the foramen magnum, you see that there are these little semicircle whales, right? Little knobs, if you would. Those are called the occipital condyle. And again, it's in your PowerPoint. Okay, condyle spells C-O-N-D-Y-L-E-S. C-O-N-D-Y-L-E-S. And those those occipital condyles actually will sit on the first bone of your vertebral column, right? And it allows you to nod your head. Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a bit. Okay, but there is your occipital bone. There is the foramen magnum, and then we have the two occipital condyles. Okay, what did I just do? Let me see. Oh, there we go. So, what else? Okay, let's take a look at the rest of the bones that makes up the orbit, right? We only talk about the top. On the side here, we have the zygomatic bone. You have two zygomatic bone, one here, and that forms the lateral side of your orbit, lateral side of your eye socket, and it also forms the prominence of your cheek. Okay, some people have really big cheekbones, right? That's the zygomatic bone that we are talking about. We have the maxilla here. This is not the first time we learn about the maxilla. Okay, we learn about the maxilla in you know, the digestive system. The maxilla forms part of the lower portion of your eye socket. Okay, and it also forms part of your nose ridge. Okay, like if you go put your hands up here like there, that location, that's part of the maxilla. Okay, and the maxilla is actually two bones that are fused together. You can't really see the fissure here, but it is two separate bones. And if I look at the bottom of it, right, it forms the front of your hard palate. Okay, and that's also where your teeth are going to be. What's the word I'm looking for? It forms the teeth socket. Okay, for the upper row of your teeth. All right. So that's the maxilla, right here, all the way up, Forms a little bit of your lower cheek as well. Okay. And let's see what else we have. So the top is frontal, zygomatic on the side, maxilla at the bottom. So let's take a look at the middle. Middle is a little bit more complicated. Okay, there are a couple bones here. There is the lacrimal bone. You have two of them, one on each side. Lacrimal bone is right behind the maxilla. And not only does it form the medial side of your eye socket, but it also contains the tear duct. Right? So inside the lacrimal bone, there's a tear duct that runs down. And behind the lacrimal bone, we have one ethmoid bone. Ethmoid bone. Let me isolate that. for you there is your ethmoid bone, right? And that forms part of your nasal septum, right? Like, you know, your the two nostrils, right? On the inside, it's separated by like a wall, right? That's part of the ethmoid bone right there. Okay. You can see right here, that's the ethmoid bone, right? And that's the nasal septum I was talking about. Okay, so on the medial side, again, we have, for the orbit, we have the necromal bone and then the ethmoid bone. The maxilla is not really part of the inner orbit. I mean, like maybe a little bit of it, but mostly for the bottom. Okay, this is gonna be like outside of the eye already for the most part. It's almost part of the nose now. And then you get your nasal bone here, and of course the nose is missing here. Like, how come the nose is missing? Where is the rest of the nose here?
Cartilage?
That's right. The nose is made of cartilage. It's not part of bones, and you know it's gonna decompose when we die. It's gonna be gone. Okay. So there is another bone at the back here. It's called the sphenoid bone. The sphenoid bone is the core bone in the head where every other bone connects to. Okay, except for the lower jaw. Okay, every other bone is somehow connected to the sphenoid. It's kind of like the cornerstone, if you would, and it forms the back of the eye socket. Okay, it goes from one side all the way to the other side. Okay, if I isolate it, you'll see that it looks like a butterfly, right? Sort of, if you would. And what is that hole for at the end right there? What are those openings for? You know the answer already. Like, we learned about it. You just have to connect the ideas together. What goes through those holes? No? Okay, let me ask you a different question then. There is a groove here. Which brain part sits in this groove?
Is that the back?
Okay, this is the front, yes. So like if I'm looking at it from the side, I see a groove here. Okay, I can look at it from the other side as well. See a groove. So what brain part that we learn would sit right there? Fits nicely into that groove. Anyone?
Is it the pituitary gland?
Yes, the pituitary gland. Okay, that's right here. That groove is exactly what's protecting the pituitary gland, and then the hypothalamus would be on top of it. Right? Do you guys see the connection? Okay, very good. Okay, I'm still looking for what goes through that hole right there, huh? What goes through the hole? Come on. Like, how about what sits in this big hole? That you should know, right? The eyeball. And then what goes through at the back? What comes out at the back of the eye, guys? No?
Optic nerve.
Yes, the optic nerve. You got it. The optic nerve, right? So the optic nerve has the exit at the back of the eye, right, to go to the brain, right? So there must be an opening for it to go through, and that's exactly where it's gonna go, right? So the right optic nerve goes through it, the left optic nerve goes through it, and then at the back, they're gonna cross over, right? The optic chiasma, right? So everything is connected. Unfortunately, I guess. Okay, we have the mandible, which is the only movable bone in the whole head. Everything else is not movable. It makes a connection with the temporal bone. Right? This is called the TMJ, the temporal mandibular joint. Okay? Some people who has a not fully connected TMJ, and when they I am like that. When I move my jaw, it constantly clicks. Right? They told me there is no fix for it. Right? Maybe your jaw clicks as well, and that's this particular location. All right, so that's all the bones in the head. Let's label some of these to to help you. Okay, this is our lovely diagram. So A is pointing at the orbit, O-R-B-I-T, orbit, which again is just eye socket. Up here, we have the frontal bone. Right? Don't forget to color in to the skull as well, because it forms the top portion of your eye socket, right? Frontal bone. Okay. What about C? What is C?
Temporal bone.
That is the temporal, very good. Okay, we have C on both sides. Okay, you can't see the parietal. Parietal is like up here, right? Okay, so in this view, we won't be able to see that too well. Temporal. You stare into the empty eye socket of the skeleton. We have the sphenoid bone. Okay, you can't really see the whole thing of it. Okay, maybe a little bit of it going in from the side, remember? Maybe a little bit, can't really be sure of that. And that's the sphenoid bone. Remember, there's a little groove on top for the pituitary gland to sit in. Okay, my computer is making this really weird noise. It's overheating, maybe from all the coloring and all the 3D models. So if it crashes and I get kicked out, just stay there. Okay, I'll come back. All right, what about this one here on the side? That one forms the prominence of your cheek as well as the lateral side of your eye socket. Right? That would be the zygomatic bone, the cheekbone. E is going to be the nasal bone. If you wear glasses, that's where your glasses are resting on. Nasal bone. Okay. Next, we have what else do we have here? Give me a second. Let's use pink here. We have this really, really big one. What is that one? Oh, I remember what bone I forgot. Okay, I'm gonna go back in a bit to tell you. Which one is this though? Anyone? That forms the top row for your teeth socket, forms the part of your heart pellet.
Maxilla bone.
That's right, Clara. Very good. That's the maxilla bone. Lovely. Oh, sorry, wrong one. This is the maxilla. G here is just pointing at the I believe is pointing at the nasal septum. Nasal septum, which is part of the ethmoid bone, right? And lastly, right here. We have the mandible. Mandible. Okay, so that's your skull. Do we have another skull? Nope, that's it. So let me go back to this thing right here. Okay. So I said 7 bones, right, for your eye socket, right? So let's count. A frontal bone for the top, zygomatic for the side, maxilla for the bottom, and then we have the necromal bone, and then ethmoid bone, right? That's 5. And then number 6 is the sphenoid bone at the back, right? So 6 bones so far. Where's the 7th one? 7th one is like right here. Right here. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit coming out from there. Like that little bit, that's the 7th bone. Okay, so that's the palatine bone. And you're like, hey, I remember hearing about the palatine bone before. That would be right here. You see the palatine bone actually comes down and forms the posterior 1/3 of your hard palate. Right? Maxilla forms the front of the hard palate. Palatine bone forms the back of the hard palate, right? And if we trace it all the way up, it also forms just like a tiny, tiny bit of your orbit. Okay, it's like a U-shaped bone, right? Let me see if I can isolate it right there, right? That's what it looks like. So that's the little part that pops up into your eye socket. It comes all the way down and forms your hard palate. Okay, that is it for the head. All right, let's go to our PowerPoint here. Let's see if we miss anything. This is a side view, right? I told you about the necromal bone, the ethmoid bone, right? Everything is basically what we said. So there are like landmarks. That's what they're called, landmarks on various bones. And it's just too much, okay? Like you don't have to know it. Like, so, you know, there's the mastoid process, the thing at the back of the ear, and so it's like a styloid process here for something else. So usually these landmarks, these weird looking protrusions and whatnot, they are for attachment sites for muscles. Okay, so if we didn't talk about it in like earlier, if it's not on the PowerPoint slide here on these notes, then you don't have to know it. Okay, so like just ignore all these landmarks. Okay? So that's the notes, basically what I told you. And here, right, that's the sphenoid bone, and at the top, the groove that I was showing you, that's called the sella turcica, which means a saddle. Okay, like the saddle of a horse, the thing that you sit on, and this like nicely protects your pituitary gland. Sella turcica, I think that's how you pronounce it. Okay, done and done and done. Okay, let's quickly do a poll. Oh, there are a lot of oh, sorry, you guys totally like answer a bunch of questions in the chat. I didn't see them. I just see them like right now. Sorry. Okay, let's do a poll here. Okay, correct answer is the temporal bone. Temporal bone is just like on the side here, nothing to do with the eye socket. The zygomatic forms the lateral side. Palatine is just that little dot, and sphenoid forms the back. How about this one? All right, good. The answer is the maxilla. Okay, this one is the maxilla, forms the upper row of the teeth. It goes up all the way to here, right? Okay, not the palatine. Palatine is just a U shape. It forms the hard palate. Okay, I'm looking for the top row of the teeth. Like the teeth, what does it sticks into, right? It sticks into the maxilla. Which bone forms? Oh, so this is a typo. Which bone? We'll say protects, right? Protects. We don't need the form. Protects the pituitary gland. Hopefully, you know it is the sphenoid bone. Okay, the butterfly. Right? It goes from one side to the other across the back of the eye, and at the top there is the sella turcica, which is where the pituitary gland sits into. It's either turcica or tertica. I don't remember. We're gonna have to ask Google pronounce to figure that one out. Okay. But anyway, you don't have to know the name. It's just you just have to know the pituitary gland sits into it. Okay, down to the spinal cord now. Let me see if I can get the spinal cord to come out. This thing is like, you know, it's good, but then it's not super user friendly. So the vertebral column is part of the exoskeleton, right? Remember, exoskeleton includes the head, the rib cage, and the vertebral column. So let's take away the head and bring out the vertebral column. There we go. And I don't need this anymore. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. So the vertebral column, the backbone, essentially has different sections. Okay, we have the ones in the neck. Okay, there are 7 of these bones. We call them cervical bones. We have 12 in the chest area, at the back, of course, right? That would be the thoracic vertebrae, and we have the lumbar one, the one that kind of at the lower back, 5 of them. And then we have this weird looking thing called a sacrum. And then we have some tiny tail bones called the coccyx bone. Okay, coccyx bone. If we had a tail, then this would continue to go on and, you know, form the bones of a tail. Okay? But we don't. So that's the coccyx bone. So here we go again. 7 cervical neck bones, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, sacrum, and then like 3 to 5 coccyx bones that they're fused together. Now, each of these things is called a vertebra. Okay, vertebra, and plural for vertebra is vertebrae. Okay, B-R-A-E. Right, so you have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, and 5 lumbar vertebrae. They stack on top of each other, and for the thoracic one, it forms a concave section. It caves in. And then for the lumbar section, or at the lower back, it's convex. It bulges out. Right? So this shape is optimized for supporting upper weight of the body. Okay, and this doesn't start creating this shape until the baby starts walking on 2 legs. When they're just crawling, the spine is pretty much like straight for the most part. Okay, but as soon as you start putting weight on it, the weight of the upper body actually help shape the curvature that you see here in your backbone. Okay, so let's take a closer look at your cervical vertebrae. So the first one is called C1, C2, C3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and C1 is called the atlas, A-T-L-A-S, like a world map, an atlas. And then C2 is called the axis. So atlas, and axis. If you have trouble remembering which one is which, alphabetically, T comes before X. So atlas and then axis. Let's take a look at the atlas. The atlas has 2 grooves on them. Okay? These grooves right here. Those grooves are going to articulate, is going to form a joint with the occipital condyle. Remember at the bottom of the occipital bone, there is the foramen magnum, and then flanking it on the sides of the foramen magnum are those occipital condyle, right? Those like semicircle stuff that are protruding. So they will sit right on top of these grooves that are on your atlas, on your C1. And that allows you to nod your head. Okay, think of those grooves as like the base of a rocking chair. It allows you to rock back and forth, right? So it sits in these grooves and it allows you to nod the head. Okay. C2 and C1, atlas and axis, makes a pivot joint, P-I-V-O-T, a pivot joint that allows you to shake your head. Okay, you can see there is a projection that comes out of the axis. Okay, and it basically sticks right into the central opening of the C1. Okay, so there's a big foramen here, and the this knob kind of sticks right through it, and again allows you to shake your head. Okay, so that's C1 and C2. Does anybody have any question? Okay. Now I am going to focus on one of these vertebrae. Okay, so they are very similar. Okay, in terms of like structures that you found on it, but as you go down, as you move from the cervical to the thoracic and then to the lumbar, what's one observation that you notice? If you take a vertebra from the neck, compare it to the chest one, and then compare it to the lower back ones, what do you notice about the changes? Yeah, the size, right? It gets bigger as we go down, which totally makes sense, right? Because you got to support all the weight on top of it, right? So they need to get bigger, right? So let's just take a look at one of these things, and I'll talk about it. Now, before I isolate it, I want you to know that actually, you know what? Let's take a look. We can just see it without moving it away. So that's the body of the vertebra. And at the top here, you see these 2 protrusions, right? They will connect with these ones of the previous one. Okay, so let me give them some names. Okay, this one is called the superior articular process. Superior means it's like on top, right? And articulate just means it's gonna make a connection. And process is something that sticks out. So we have 2 superior articular process at the top, and it's gonna connect with the inferior articular process of the previous one. Okay, you see they connect, right? It's like puzzle pieces. So this one also have its own inferior articular process, which would then articulate with the superior articular process of the next. Okay, and then they just kind of stack together. At the back, there is this thing called the spinous process. Okay, and it kind of locks the spine in place. So you can bend forward, but you can't bend backward too much, right? If you bend backwards too much, this pointy part is literally gonna bump into the next one, and then it locks it in place, right? So that's important because we don't want to be like those balloons that are in like car dealerships or something, right? We don't want to be like all floppy. Okay, we want to be able to have stability in our spine, right? And these spinous processes allow us to do that. Now, on the side where the 2 vertebrae connect with each other, there is a hole here, And that hole is called the intervertebral foramen. Okay? That's where your spinal nerve is going to be coming out of. Okay, the spinal nerve is going to be coming out. Now you don't really see it here because I actually took that away. But let me, if I bring back the connective tissue, oh my goodness, what just happened? Can I delete that? No, that's not what I want. Looks like it's not gonna happen. Let's see. No. Ligament. Oh, there we go. Sort of what I want. I guess. Can I? Okay, let me take away that one. Sorry. So now in between the vertebrae, you can see there is a intervertebral disc, right? That disc is what's going to be cushioning between the two vertebrae and prevents wear and tear. But as we age, that gets thinner and sometimes it slips right out. And if it does slip out, then the spinal nerve that's coming out in between, right, from the intervertebral foramen, that's going to get pressed on. And then you have like a pinched nerve. Okay, so that is pretty much all we have to know for the backbone. Okay, for the vertebral column. Let me just bring back the PowerPoint and go through it with you one more time. Okay, so that's
So,
the
Professor, quick question.
Sure.
So when you get the epidural, is that the one they put it through?
Yeah. So like the epidural is down here, right? We mentioned that before. It's going to be between L4 and L5. So this is L1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So between 4 and 5, that's where they're going to insert the needle through. Okay. And by the time the spinal cord gets down to here, it becomes the ponytail, right? I said so. It's not possible for the needle to like go through the spinal cord. They're just gonna move out of the way, and that's like the safe point of insertion. Okay. So that just tells you what they are. The sacrum is this weird looking bone at the bottom, and then you get your tailbones, the coccyx. Okay, 3 to 5 that are fused together. This is just showing you the C1 and the C2 again, the grooves for the occipital condyle to sit on. This odontoid process, it's gonna poke right through in the foramen and forms the pivot joint that I was talking about. You don't have to know what it's called, okay? Just know atlas and axis though. If you look at the vertebra, we have the articulate process at the top and the bottom. And then, looking at two adjacent ones, the side is where the spinal nerve comes out, right? You have 31 pairs. Of course, you know that. At the back, we have the spinous process. That's to lock the backbone in place, okay? It's kind of like a stack of chairs, right? If you stack enough, then they bend forward, but not the other way too much. Okay, next we have the sternum. Sternum has 3 parts to it. Let me see if I can find the sternum here. Let's put away the spinal column, and we need to have the rib cage. There we go. You know what? Let's keep the vertebral column there. Okay, so the rib cage is right here. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I need to bring back some of the connective tissue. But I have to know where it is. The rib cage. Where is the rib cage? There we go. Is that it? Did anything come up? No. Oh, come on. Oh, there we go. There we go. Lovely. One second. Okay, let me just close this thing. There's too many things that are open. Can't keep track of them. Okay, so the rib cage, we have the sternum, which is right here. Okay, the chest bone. I think that's what it's called. The regular name doesn't matter. It's called sternum. Okay, and the sternum has three parts. We have the manubrium, okay, M-A-N, and then manubrium of the sternum. We have the body, B-O-D-Y, and then we have the xiphoid process. Oh my goodness, can I unhide that? Okay, there we go. We have the xiphoid process right here. Okay, xiphoid process. So let's talk about what that stuff does. Okay, so the manubrium is the top part, the superior part of the sternum, and that is where your first rib is going to connect to. Okay, your first rib as well as your second rib. Okay, first rib as well as part of the second rib. It's going to connect to. The body is to the rest of the rib. That's where they're going to connect to. And then the xiphoid process, that's where it creates like an anchorage point for your diaphragm to attach to. Okay? Remember, your diaphragm helps you breathe, right? So we're going to hook onto something. It's going to hook onto the xiphoid process. Now, that's the sternum. Let's talk about the ribs. How many pair of ribs do we have? Anyone know? 12.
Isn't it like 13?
12 actually, yeah. 12 pairs of ribs. Good try though, very close. Okay, 12 pairs of ribs. So the ribs are separated into true ribs as well as false ribs. Number 1 to 7 are true ribs. Okay? What is a true rib? A true rib is a rib that connects to the sternum with its own cartilage. Okay, these are called costal cartilage. Okay, so rib number 1 originates from T1 at the back. Remember, we have T1 to T12, right? 12 thoracic vertebrae, and that's where the ribs are going to originate. Okay, so it comes out from T1, goes all the way to the front, and it has its own cartilage connecting to the sternum. So that's first true rib. Second, right? Number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so they all have their own intercostal cartilage, costal cartilage, sorry, that would connect to the sternum. Okay, so number 1 and number 2 connects to the manubrium. Number 2 to 7 connects to the body. Okay, 2 is like kind of, if you take a closer look, 2 is like connecting to the boundary of the manubrium and the body. Okay, so these are true ribs, number 1 to number 7. And then the rest of them is called false ribs. Right? They are false because they don't connect directly to the sternum with their own cartilage. So number, this is number 7. So 8, 9, and 10, 8, 9, 10, their costal cartilage connects to the cartilage of number 7 instead of directly to the sternum. Okay, so they kind of piggyback on the costal cartilage of number 7 over there. And then we have these floating ribs, which don't connect to the sternum directly or indirectly at all. They're just like at the bottom, kind of like fanking out like that with no cartilage. Okay, so 11 and 12. Those are the floating ribs, which is also part of your false ribs. Okay. So over here, let's go through it together. All right. Let's take out your coloring pencil if you have any. that right there. That's the manubrium. Manu and then brium. So you see number 1 connects to it, number 2 also connects partly to it. This is the body. It's the easiest bone to learn. And then that's the xiphoid process. Okay, so I'll call that 1, 2, 3. 1 plus 2 plus 3 gives you sternum. Okay. Body. And then xiphoid process. That's where the diaphragm attaches to, right? Okay, so let's try to color the true ribs. Okay, so 1, probably have to do it yourself later. Okay, 1, 2, okay, 3. It's hard to color from the back. I think it's going to be confusing, so I'm just going to do it at the front. Okay, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so these are true ribs. They have their own costal cartilage. Okay, they got their own costal cartilage. And then this is I should probably write down for you. That is 1 to 7. Okay. Then we have the false ribs. The false ribs would be the rest of them. 8, 9, 10, 11 comes out here, and 12. And so those are the false rib. Next time, if you eat ribs, you can think about whether you're eating the true ribs or the false ribs. Okay, and just to remind you that the last 2 pair of false ribs, they are floating ribs. (11 plus 12). 11 and 12. Okay, those don't have any costal cartilage whatsoever. The false ribs, they 8 to 10, right? They piggyback on the costal cartilage of number 7. Does anyone have any question before we move on to the shoulder? That's the next thing that we're gonna do. Okay. I just have to bring out the shoulder. Give me 1 second. Is there a way to reset the whole thing? There we go. Oh, no. That's not what I want. Oh, no. Oh, boy. Okay, give me a second. I really gotta reset this whole thing. Okay, I don't want the connective tissue. Hide that. Okay, please be patient with me. Endocrine, nervous. Okay, we got the, what else is there? Is that those are the kidneys? We're gonna get rid of those things as well. There we go. I don't need that anymore. And then we will look at the hand. Okay, there we go. Can I go in there? Okay, good. Okay, so this is the shoulder girdle. which is like this whole area here, right? So it's stabilized by a couple of bones here. We have the clavicle, your collarbone, clavicle. If you feel your collarbone, it will go all the way to the front and it will connect with part of your sternum. Okay, sorry, I took the sternum away already. It's too much work to bring it back in, okay? But like you can think about it, right? There is the manubrium at the top here, and that's where the clavicle kind of like connects to, okay? So you have two of them. Clavicle is kind of like a S-shaped bone, starts at the front and then goes all the way to the back, and then it connects with your shoulder blade. Okay, so there are like a couple of things that are coming out from the scapula. That's what we call it, and it makes connection with various things. We don't really have to know all the different part names. Okay, but this is the scapula. Okay, and you know you can feel the spine of the scapula by running your hand through your shoulder blade. Okay, so this is where your deltoid muscle is gonna attach to. More on that later on. Now, what I do want to talk about is on the lateral side of your scapula, there is a groove. So this here is the humerus, right? Your right here at the bone. Let me just take that out. You can see there is a socket for the humerus to connect to. Okay, so this socket is part of the scapula. Okay, part of the scapula, and we call that the glenoid cavity. Glenoid, Glenoid. So the glenoid cavity will form a ball and socket joint with the head of the humerus. Okay, so ball and socket is really wide range of motion, right? You can rotate, you can lift it up, you can pull it down, right? So that's creates flexibility. Okay. So moving down, we have the humerus, the funny bone, Humerus. And further down, we can see the humerus is going to form a hinge joint. We'll learn the names of the joint later, okay? But hinge joint allows you to do this, right? Okay, it doesn't extend beyond 90 degrees. Okay, it's like a door hinge. And the hinge joint is formed between the humerus and the ulna. If you think about the anatomical position, the forearm is made up of two bones. Okay? The radius on the outside and the ulna on the inside. Okay, and your elbow is actually part of the ulna, okay? And it forms the hinge joint. So ball and socket at the top here between the humerus and the scapula, and then a hinge joint here at the elbow between the humerus and the ulna, okay, which is right here. Okay, so radius is on the outside, it's the lateral one, and the ulna is the inside one. Okay, let me show you the PowerPoint slide. Shoulder girdle. Okay, everything I told you, you can just read about it. That's the glenoid cavity that I was talking about. Don't worry about the acromion and the coracoid. We're not going to worry about those things. This is the humerus. You can see the clavicle goes to the front and it connects with the manubrium, right, of the sternum. If you take a look at the arm, we have the humerus, the radius on the outside, and the ulna. This is the this is the right arm that we're looking at, the right arm. You can see the thumb, right? If you can locate the thumb, which is the shorter finger, then you will know which side we're looking at, okay? So a couple of things here, the hinge joint, right, with at the elbow, and then we have the at the distal end of the radius, we have something called the condylar joint, which allows you to wave your hand like this. Okay, more on that later. Let's take a look at the oh yeah, the chicken wing. When we compare our human arm to that of a chicken. Okay, the humerus is like the tiny drumstick. Okay, that is on the chicken wing, and the actual wing part, the one that we eat with the two bones, that's our forearm. Okay, and then the tip that has like almost no meat, that's like our hand. Okay? Of course, chickens don't have fingers. They but they have like analogous parts to it. I mean, they do have fingers. They have one finger. Okay, to be one big one and then like a tiny finger here. Those are the finger bones, but they are not like for like dexterity purposes, right? They're just there for, I don't know what they use it for. Maybe for fighting. Okay, but that's like an comparison between the chicken and the human hand. Okay, so let's take a look at the hand. The hand has these tiny bones at the wrist. Okay, there are a total of 8 of these bones. They're called carpals. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then on the other side, 7. Wait, where is it? 1. Let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can't see where the 8th one is. Did I miss something? There are 8. Okay, just trust me. There are 8 of these things. They're called the carpals. I don't know why they are not all shown here. And then over here, oh, they have the names here though. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there you go. Okay. I'm not going crazy. We don't have to know all the names. We can just call them collectively as carpals. So that's like your wrist, right? You heard of like carpal tunnel syndrome, right? So that's the same location, the wrist area. And then the back of the hand, like if you slap someone at the back of the hand, then you're slapping their metacarpals. And then you have your phalanges, which are your finger bones, okay? So if you take a look at your thumb, the thumb has 2 phalanges, 1, 2, and then the rest of them has 3. So like, you can bend your index finger. So that's 1, 2, 3 phalanges. So each of these 4 fingers, 4 times 3 gives you 12, 13, 14, a total of 14 phalanges on each hand. Let's color some of these things. Okay, we have our carpals right here. That's the wrist bones. Carpals. Okay. We have the metacarpals. Five of them. 8 of them. And the finger bones, the phalanges. Okay, see 3 for these fingers, except the thumb. Right, proximal, distal, phalanges. 14. Okay, 3, 3, 3, 3, and then 2. Then we have the radius and the ulna, and this is here is called a condyle joint, which allows like side to side motion. I think I spelled that wrong. Sorry. CONDYLOID joint. Any question about the hand? We're just gonna do a few poll questions here. Which bone is the most proximal? Proximal means closest to the joint, right? Okay, so humerus, this one is the most proximal. So like one more time, a humerus here. And then the one on the outside, that's the radius, ulna, carpal, metacarpals, phalanges. Okay, the correct answer here is humerus. What about this? Good. Right, most people got it right. That is the scapula. The scapula. Let's do the next one. Good. Clavicle. Very good. How about this one? Okay, that would be the occipital bone. Occipital bone. Okay, someone chose mandible. Mandible is this one, the lower jaw. And then last question. Yeah, 14 phalanges, okay, on each hand. I think that's a good spot to stop. I think we are right back on track. Okay, I'm hoping to finish this on Monday, and then Wednesday we will do reproductive system. Reproductive is really fast, really short. Okay, I should be able to finish it in one class. Yeah, so like I said, I will open the quiz between Monday and Wednesday. Okay, you just do it whenever you want between that window, and I'll post the information on that later on today, probably. Okay, thank you for your attention and participation. I'll see you all next week. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye for now.